Hi everyone, and welcome to ONC's Innovation Engagement Series, where we're going to be discussing federal regulations and programs that impact health technology startups and developers. Today we're talking about Pillbox, a project from the National Library of Medicine that makes medication-related information more accessible and easier to use for developers. Citizen, clinician, and developer communities have all been partners throughout the development of Pillbox, creating a new model for community engagement with federal open data. I'm pleased to introduce two of our speakers today, David Hale and Mark Silverberg. David is the Pillbox project manager at the National Institutes of Health. He's an advocate for open government and citizen engagement, and also works with GSA's Digital Services Innovation Center to help spread these ideas across federal agencies. Mark is a data geek at heart who has always been interested in health. After winning an HHS app challenge with a team of clinicians, he started Social Health Insights, where he creates technical solutions to challenges facing public health and healthcare delivery. One quick housekeeping note, we encourage everyone watching to ask questions, and we'll leave some time at the end to provide answers for all of you. Please use the Q&A button on the left-hand side of the Hangout screen to add your question to the queue, or simply leave your question on the Google Hangout Plus page. With that, I'll go ahead and let you guys get started.
Great, thank you, Maya. So David, Maya gave us a quick introduction, but can you tell us a little bit more about what this NLM Pillbox project is that you manage?
Yeah, sure. So Pillbox is actually a bunch of different projects that all started years ago when the National Library of Medicine started taking pictures of pills. And then as that project developed, we started to need access to the data. So we looked at our own data within NIH and Food and Drug Administration. And that's the thing that just kind of snowballed, So we really quickly realized that we had trouble using our own data. So we actually had to build the system to access our data, to start working with the images and the data. And then once we started to get in contact with developers that also said, hey, we don't have access to it either, that kind of, that was sort of our pivot, where we realized instead of building, sort of just a website for pill images and data, we really need to be building developer tools. And then from that point forward, pretty much everything we've done has been, how can we build the best platform for developers to get access to information about, pills, medications, images, and then get connections to all the other data and start to build services around that.
Cool, cool. So how big is the team? What's your part? What's your role? Do you use outside technical resources? Sort of give us a high overview of how the project is structured.
The high-level overview. So the secret of the project is that I am the only full-time person on Pillbox, and I have been pretty much since the beginning. So I kind of think about Pillbox like the band Guns N' Roses. So Axl Rose has been the lead singer for what, more than 25 years now, but every single member of the band has changed. But then you get members like Slash that are there for like 10, 15 years, and they do these amazing contributions, and like Slash really helped define GNR. So that's kind of the way Pillbox is. So I'm the person who sets the vision and the direction for the project, but then there's all kinds of people that just sort of come in and out and work on the project. Some are there for several years. Some of them are there just for a few times. We've had a limited number of contracts that we've put out to bid, that we've worked with outside companies developing some tools. But for me, I do everything from the MySQL database. I do all the data exploration, sort of looking at ways to make the data better usable by developers. I do some PHP and some web work, but we have someone who really does that. I do all the partnership building with FDA, Veterans Affairs, researchers, to kind of build that out. And then everything I do, a little user interface design, some user experience work, just, pretty much whatever has to get done. If I can't find someone to help me with it, I'll be the one to do it. Or when we get someone, it's really fun because then I can share with them my vision for the project, and every time, everyone I've worked with has just taken my idea, ran with it, and what they came back with was something way better than even what I thought to begin with. So it's sort of a series of partnerships, and I'm just the guy that's staying at the middle trying to keep the boat, kind of going in one general direction.
Yeah, if you could you define that one direction? Like, what if you had to sum it up in 140 characters, what is Pillbox here for?
Wow, 140 characters. All right, don't count me on this. All right, so the big idea behind Pillbox is to take the data related to pills and medications and make it easy, accessible, and complete for developers to use, just to build whatever awesome thing they want to build to solve some problem in health.
Cool.
And then another 40 characters. We also do data quality work because the data needs scrubbing.
That's actually a great segue. So in case people don't know, basically, and the way I think of APIs is that, it's a process. You have input coming in, maybe a query or some data, and then it does something, so Pillbox does something, and then you get output.
Right.
Without getting too technical, can you tell us what are some of the inputs, what are the outputs, and sort of how that all works?
Yeah, I will. And let me just backtrack really quick and just make a couple quick comments about the source data and what we do. So in Pillbox, the atomic unit of data is a pill. I should have grabbed the pill so I could hold it in my hand. But basically, in the Pillbox universe, if there's a pill you can put in your hand, that should be the single atomic record. And then Pillbox builds all of the data about what the pill looks like, what the drugs are that are in it, what the inactive ingredients are that are in that pill as well, who made it, the control codes to link out to other systems, and we try and package that all in one place. And then a huge part of the Pillbox project has been creating images of the, really super high-res images of the pills to put in the public domain so that when a developer hits our API or the data, they get the pill, they get everything you need to know about that pill and a picture of it. So now, to answer your question about the inputs and outputs for the API, probably the easiest way to get into the API is to think of it as a pill identification system. Okay. So there's lots of websites, lots of apps where, what's this pill and everything else. So Pillbox does all of that. We do it through a free and open API. So you can give us the text that's written on the pill, what it looks like, and the API will give you back all of the possibilities for that. But then on top of it, we add things like you can ask us about a company. Mm-hmm. So, David Pharmaceuticals, we'll give you every pill David Pharmaceuticals makes, or every pill that has acetaminophen. Lots of people these days are really interested in acetaminophen toxicity and liver damage from taking too much. So you can ask us, give us every pill that acetaminophen has. If you're building someone that has allergies, so if a person has a severe lactose intolerance, we'll tell you every pill that has lactose as one of the inactive ingredients. So that's the whole spectrum of what you can search on. And then what you get back is basically all of that data for every pill. So whether you ask for it or not, we'll give you the physical appearance, what's in it, everything else for all of those pills, and we'll give you a pointer to the picture for that pill if we have it. And right now we've got maybe like 60-70% coverage of the U.S. prescription market, and we're building that. And then one of the things we're doing right now, and we're actually building a new API, and we want to give developers better control of the outputs, because right now you get every piece of metadata for every record, and then you have to come back to get the images. So we're trying to do a new API where developers can really be, they can tell us what the outputs are. And also right now our output is only XML. And in this new version we're going to have JSON as an option for that. So yeah, so we're getting into the 21st century finally.
Awesome. No, that's awesome. And you sort of alluded to this, but I think it's really important, especially as you talk about quality and how there's all these different things happening. So let's just clarify. Pillbox is an API and not the source of the data, right? So can you talk about where some of the, sometimes the data comes from different places, I know. Sort of tell us some of those places. What are you working on adding, maybe, things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Pillbox is absolutely not the source of this data, except in certain cases. So basically, any pharmaceutical company that wants to sell a drug in the U.S. is required to send specific information to the FDA about that drug.
Right.
And in 2003, I think it was, FDA went to a completely electronic XML-based system for all of that data from the firms. It's called structured product labeling, and we always abbreviated it as SPL. And I don't want to get too like acronym-y, but SPL, if you're going to work with Pillbox, that's just, we use that acronym all the time, or we can just say the drug labels. So the firms have to send that data to FDA. FDA sends that data to the National Library of Medicine, and we're actually the ones who release it through a website called Daily Med. And I'll tell you, anytime you go to a Walgreens, a CVS, or maybe like you have to go to the ER at Inova, if they're doing anything related to medication, whether it's the nurse in the med card or your prescription being filled, I would say there's a 95% chance all of that data is derived from those drug labels from Daily Med, and that's where the whole world comes to build everything. And going back to that first question about, what's Pillbox? I said, oh, we used to take pictures of pills. That was the only thing. When we needed to start using that data, we realized we couldn't use it. Like the XML structure for that is so complex, and unless you've got your fleet of regulatory specialists and gov relations specialists in pharma, we couldn't do it. So, basically we formed a partnership with FDA. They taught us how to use it. I've tried to become as big of an SPL drug label geek as I can, and we restructured that whole system, where a drug label has like 5,000 lines of code, and it's got, you've worked with that data. It's got trees,
I know what you're talking about.
Branches and leaves. This stuff is crazy. If you're an expert, you can work with it. But if you're a researcher at a college, if you're bootstrapping a startup, man, even if you do have some initial funding, you can't afford these third-party resources. So that's, really what we're building Pillbox for. But at the same time, we're trying to work with all those big players in FDA to improve the data quality, and be part of that conversation. So we take those drug labels, we parse it down to something that is super easy, MySQL, really simple schema to use. Then we bring in another data set called RxNorm. That's at the National Library of Medicine. If you're into informatics and pharmacy and medication, that's an amazing resource, because the RxNorm basically takes every drug in the world, standardizes the name, and connects it to all of the different control codes for like the World Health Organization, SNOMED, VA reference terminology. And so Pillbox brings all that in, and we get the right coding and name for every pill in Pillbox from RxNorm. So you can use Pillbox to build, but if you want to just jump off to some other, drug vocabulary or drug information system, Pillbox lets you do that. And then it also helps us with the quality control. And then probably the third data source are the images of the pills. So like I said, we started years ago as this little pill imaging project with the VA. Then we started working with FDA. Now there's another group at the National Library of Medicine they're completely doing the imaging now. We've turned all that over to them, and they're taking it just, to another level of precision and science. So we've got these 4 different, sets of images from different places, but they're all verified by pharmacists. So we bring those into Pillbox, and then probably the most stressful part of my job is I'm the person that takes every one of those images and connects it to a record in Pillbox and says, yeah, this is the right image for this med. And even though it's all pharmacist QC'd, that's the tough thing, especially when you start bringing the data quality issues, because sometimes there aren't just right and wrong answers. So we've got data from the labels, RxNorm names and all their control codes, and images from multiple sources that we've made public domain. And then all of that comes together. That's like the awesome ball that is Pillbox.
Wow, cool. So I think you had mentioned on the Google Hangout page that a lot of this stuff is open source, and that one of the reasons why we're having this Hangout is to make people aware that a lot of the infrastructure is open source, and that there's a new awesome GitHub documentation and a wiki, etc. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Let me go back to the Guns N' Roses analogy. So our data process, back in the day when we first started working with the labels, we had a couple really brilliant computer scientists. They hacked together like a XML parsing system with all the stuff they knew. A little bit of Java, some MySQL. I think they were even throwing some Oracle at it for a while. A couple people did a ton of command line scripting. So it was awesome. It was very resource effective, didn't really cost the taxpayers much, but the problem was only those two computer scientists could do it, and whenever I wanted a new update for Pillbox, I had to get on their schedule, we had to retweak, everything broke. That's why you saw like 6-8 month update cycles, for Pillbox. And then as we started to scale and more developers started to use it, we realized, that had become a liability. So last summer, we applied for this new innovation program at Health and Human Services called HHS Ignite, and that's run out of the CTO's office. So we were accepted for that, and our proposal was to take our whole data process system for Pillbox and rebuild it all open source with a single set of Python scripts. So it wasn't just that we got accepted, it was that the secretary of HHS looked at the program and said, yeah, I want that thing done. So then suddenly we had a ton of support for that and for open source. So we spent about 8 months doing that, and then I'm going to switch over and do some screen sharing.
Cool.
Let's see.
And we'll post all those links on the Hangout page after the
Yeah, there's already links there, and I'm going to post some other links here pretty soon. So, all right, so this, can you see the repo on GitHub?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So this is the repo on GitHub where our new data process is. And here are all the scripts. Like literally, this is everything you need to do to build your own Pillbox. I'm just totally thrilled that this is out there because now you can build the data, you can start working with the data. We don't parse every single piece from the drug labeling data, so this is where you can start to build with that. We also have started to build out a new developer page, just something that looks a little more professional, gives developers everything they need in one place if they want to start working with Pillbox. And then we've also started to put a lot of the documentation up on GitHub, especially warnings and information developers need to know about working with this data. In addition to that, on the Pillbox website, everything that you need, if you want keys to the API, it's right here at the Pillbox website, which there's a link to that in the Hangout. You can download the raw data if you don't want to use the API. You can download the full image library as well. I think that's everything. Mark, anything I miss you think I should show before I turn off screen sharing?
No, I think that makes sense. Just to clarify, because I bet some people, this is the first thing that I asked when I saw the GitHub repos. So right now the processing scripts are public, but you're working, I think, on getting the API, which will also be useful to people who want to build similar projects for their other data sets, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a really great point. So the data process code is public now, and we're using that Python code. We're about to do the first data update to Pillbox that'll be solely based on the Python code.
Cool.
But the API and our search engine, that code is still closed. So we're, part of what happened is that, we got the approval to do this open source project, and I said, all right, it's time to bring Pillbox out of startup mode and make it really production quality. And then I realized there's a reason I didn't major in computer science in college, because I was the worst CS student at the University of Maryland. So basically, we're going back, we have to re-architect the whole back end, all of the search, all the PHP. So basically, the Python is great, but it deliberately breaks everything. So we're re-engineering all the back end stuff, and hopefully within the next couple months, we'll release all of the API source code, all of our PHP search code as well, even some of the code for how we display the results.
Right.
Because I think there's some other groups that would be interested in saying, hey, I don't care about pills, but I have pictures of something else.
Yep.
They have definable physical characteristics. I want a web-based interface to be able to search and display on that. We're going to drop all the code and a search engine for that as well. So it's all kind of coming together right now. So I'm just really excited about it.
And then some of the QA stuff too that could be transferable to other QA processes, right?
Yeah, I didn't geek out too much on the data quality issues. And I mean, like, first thing, the caveat, like, all big data has data quality issues. There's nothing, unique about that in this case. And I know over the last few years, the FDA has been working really aggressively on working with those pharmacy companies to improve the quality of the data, better validation. So we're doing stuff with Pillbox now that we couldn't do a few years ago because the quality wasn't there. But now the FDA and firms are really working hard on that, and we're working with them. So we send them reports. Here's all the weird little things we found in the data. The companies come back and say, all right, this is awesome. Let's work on making these changes. So in the new version of the Python code that we're writing, we're going to build in a whole section of error and discrepancy and anomaly detection algorithms into it. So everyone will be able to do that. And if everything goes the way we planned, which we're just starting on that, so take that with a grain of salt, we're going to have a nice web-based interface where you'll be able to look at the errors, discrepancies, manage the data. Like literally, the thing we're going to put on GitHub will be the thing that I'm going to use to manage Pillbox and all the data. So we're going to get to, I'm hoping, like 100% dog fooding situation where we literally, the code that we have on GitHub is the code that I use to work with and manage the whole project. And our timeline for that is, I want to say I'd like to have that be the Christmas present, but you know, honestly, I bet it's going to be a Valentine's Day present because you know how that stuff goes.
Well, still a good occasion. No, that sounds awesome. Cool. Let's take a little. You know, you and I are both really passionate about this drug stuff and building it, and you've really built. You've not only made it so developers can play with it, but people are actually building things on top of this, right? So let's talk about. Tell us some of the common things that you've seen, and if you have anything to show, that would be cool too. Things that people are building that you think are cool and useful and a good use of the API.
Yeah. So probably the easiest the easiest connection with Pillbox is that people build drug identification systems. So whether it's a smartphone app, what's this drug, something online, that's probably the most common app that I've seen built with Pillbox. The second one is medication reminders. So, you know, hey, it's Tuesday morning, it's time to take your blood pressure med and, you know, your cholesterol med. Kind of, you know, those are great, but I also see the app stores are just flooded with those. Yeah. And I think the real value add is when you start embedding them into other systems. So I'm going to share out just a quick deck that I made with a few things. So first, you know, some of the really, I'm not going to go full screen just because I don't want to. Yeah, this is good enough here. So some of the really cool stuff I've seen built with this, and Mark, you know, like total disclosure, one of these is yours. This is the Google Glass voice activated interface for identifying pills. Ask Open Data, which that's pretty cool.
I think so too.
But also, you know, drugs.com, which is the most highly trafficked drug identification website on the internet, they now use all of Pillbox's data and images. They do 3 million pill identification requests a month, and they show images from Pillbox, and they use some of our data as well. So for me, like that's a huge success story. That, you know, we're empowering someone else to provide, you know, people that, you know, a couple orders of magnitude beyond, probably 3 orders of magnitude beyond what we're going to do. Down here in the corner, ID My Pill. That's a smartphone pill identification app where you take a picture with your phone and it tries to identify the pill. I think it was one of the first ones out there. This is an area of huge potential. Everybody wants to build the smartphone ID app. So ID My Pill, the accuracy, it's hit or miss. This is a really difficult thing to do, and this is really, you know, Adrian Rosbach, who developed this, was one of the first guys out there. And again, full disclosure, he was at the National Library of Medicine like a decade ago doing some of the early research on machine-based pill identification. Let's see, the U.S. Department of Justice is building drug ID systems for their agents that have all the information a DEA agent needs about identifying pills. Some other really cool stuff, the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, New Media Lab, which, you know, all kinds of really cool innovations have come out of there. They've been using it for some of their work on patient-clinician communications. The Department of Veterans Affairs uses our photography documents, our specification of methodology. They're imaging all of the meds that are in the VA system and using that to support healthcare for our veterans, which that just makes me feel really good to know. And they share the pictures back with Pillbox. So a lot of the images you see in Pillbox actually came from our VA partnership, which is great. Some other crazy things that have been done. A bunch of civic hackers got together a long time ago when we first had the API out, and they did a proof of concept of a Facebook game that would have had these little South Park characters prescribing meds to each other in the emergency room. They never finished the game. They open sourced all the code for it, which
cool.
I thought was kind of good because I was pretty much going to get fired if they had released that game. But it was, I mean, but that really showed the limits of what you can do. So, you know, these are all different kinds of things that I've seen developers do. One guy built Pillbox into the, what's it called? Passbook in iOS.
Okay.
So your medications became passbook entries, just like your Starbucks card or your flight reservations, so that you and your clinician can better talk about it. So, you know, my advice for developers that want to work with Pillbox is, you know, play around with the data, you know, build some things on your own, but then get with clinicians, get with emergency responders, get with the people that are at the front lines and find out what their problems are, what their challenges are, get with patient advocate groups, you know, people like Regina Holiday or ePatient Dave.
Yeah.
You know, call up ePatient Dave and say, ePatient Dave, what do patients need related to their medication to help them have a better conversation with their doctor or their healthcare providers? He'll give you a ton of ideas, and then bring that group together, which that's where I see the success stories.
Totally, and just as a developer, I mean, I have no clinical background, but I have found I can attribute almost all my success to partnering with people who actually know what they're talking about in the clinical space, and really amazing things, as you mentioned, happen when developers, clinician, government, people, advocacy groups come together and actually work together. So that's awesome. I do have one thing to address. I'm getting some messages over Twitter and such that I think we might have had some technical difficulties showing the screen, but we will definitely figure that out and post the slides on the Google Hangout later, and we'll make it right. But believe us, David was showing some cool stuff, and we'll post screenshots after the fact.
Yeah, I'll make sure I get everything up, and every link that I've shown or talk about, I'll make sure is up on the Google Hangout page.
Yeah, cool. All right, great. So let's move on. So there's definitely a few different apps, and this is a great segue. There are a lot of apps that are doing Pill ID, and then there must be people doing cool things that aren't being public or being publicized. In your opinion, and from having your ear to the ground, what are some opportunities for developers potentially to create apps using this data that you haven't really heard about yet, if anything?
All right. Well, let's see. The stuff I haven't heard about, that's kind of tough. But I tell you, some of the really interesting opportunities, a lot of it comes down to partnering. So, we've both already said, get with, clinical people, whether it's emergency providers. I want to broaden that. Get with people from state departments of health. Yeah. Talk to someone at the Indian Health Service, your local county health department. I mean, like those a few years ago when H1N1 was a big public health issue. My father works for the city, for my hometown. I talked with him about it. What he and the other city officials were saying was that, hey, if you're the state, if you're on a national level, you've got tons of support. But when you're down on that civic level, you don't get that help. You're invisible. And I think there's a really great opportunity to build systems that scale. And if you want to get into sort of like, why is this even like a viable product? You build a system for a city that scales, you can sell that. You can distribute it to other cities because they all have the same problems. So I would say really get out there and see what's happening. I'd also say look internationally. Like look at what sort of the Health 2.0 innovators in Europe, in Asia, especially South Korea in Asia. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. See what those conversations are like. Luckily, most of them are in English, and if they're not, Twitter and Facebook have translation systems now, so that's great. You know, see what's happening there. Look at organizations like the World Health Organization or the Pan American Health Organization, you know, and see what kind of challenges they're working on, and where, you know, there's plenty of other people that have the problems. You know, and so if you're a developer, if you've got the expertise, then just, you know, kind of get in the middle, find someone with those problems, and then, you know, you're just really set to build. You know, but some other cool stuff that I've seen, let's see, at the Health Data Initiative, the Health Data Palooza this year, they had a competition for doing art with health data. And someone did this beautiful, I'll find it, maybe not today, but they did this thing that had all of the colors of the pills in Pillbox with, you know, the little black circle, the white, and then the different colors. It was just, you know, it was a visualization, but artistically it was beautiful. And I mean, that's the, you know, like, look for things that are just completely outside of, you know, sort of what you're doing. And probably the last thing is get with colleges and universities, especially like schools of pharmacy. And so schools of pharmacy have informatics problems that their students want to work with, so they need computer scientists. The computer science programs always have students that are looking for something really cool and hot, because if you're one of 2,000 students in a CS program at a university, especially if it's competitive, man, you want to really make your project stand out. I'd say come to Pillbox and build something that, like, nobody else in your program is working with. And then a lot of times, that's how people start companies. That's how people get job offers even before they've graduated. So those are kind of like my where I see a lot of the opportunities. But I mean, what about you? I mean, you're out there more than I am. What do you see?
No, I have so many things to follow up with you on all that stuff that you were saying. Let me try to get it all out. So one, that picture from Health Data Palooza was awesome. I think it was by some folks at MedStar, headed up by Kevin Malloy. I'm sure we'll find a link out there. I told him I want a T-shirt with that, but I think the market for that is probably pretty, David. But talking about getting in groups and working on it, I hear there's an event coming up.
What an awesome segue! Yes, there is not only an event coming up, but there's a pretty cool event. So ONC, the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT, their innovation section, they're the ones who are running this hangout, are holding a codathon, hackathon, focused on medication management at the end of this month in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There's a group called Treehouse Health that's hosting it. And so for a weekend, it's October 24th, 25th, and 26th, we're going to get just, you know, all these just really brilliant developers, coders, health IT people, obviously the Pillbox crew, together with OpenFDA, which I can't believe we've gone 33 minutes and we haven't talked about OpenFDA already.
I was getting there. Weird.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, OpenFDA is another project at Health and Human Services that's just really just, you know, hacking data wide open and exposing it and making it super easy to use. So OpenFDA and Pillbox will both be there, and RxNorm, that drug vocabulary I kept talking about, they can't make it, but they're going to be there virtually for office hours with the teams. So we're going to basically, you know, we're going to lock everyone in Treehouse for 72 hours and just, you know, put together just whatever amazing ideas people come up with. Then we're going to do the judging on Sunday. So I think there's a link to that already. So I would really, even if you can't make it out there, I would tell everybody just stay, you know, keep refreshing the Codathon page, because we're going to be putting some really cool dev resources up there, you know, just to get people excited about that.
Right, and if you can't, I think you covered that part, and also on the topic of collaboration, meeting people, things like that. And this is something I'm not sure the answer of. But you have a listserv, right, for the Pillbox project that we'll link to as well, and it's on the website. Is that a two-way discussion, or is that more of a broadcast when you have news to share?
Yeah, all right. So you just got all the good questions. I mean, but that's Well, that's the thing, you know, like I said, we built Pillbox internally, and we
Right.
never really thought about like scalability and developer communication and evangelism. So that's an area where we're really working to catch up. So on the Hangout page, there's a link to a listserv at the NIH. NIH, you know, we love listservs because it's just really easy and it's platform agnostic. So there is a developer listserv. I would recommend everyone get on that listserv. Won't be a whole lot, you know, coming out of it in terms of maybe, you know, 2 to 4 messages a month. We're not going to get spammy with it. However, that's one way. That's kind of how that's set up. But with all of the code that we're dropping on GitHub, now we have access to the whole GitHub issue tracking system. So once we drop the API code up there, that's where we're going to do all of the bug tracking for that. There is an email, but you know, I've got to get to all the emails and answer all the emails, and then they're never connected. And a lot of people call about the same thing. So I would say GitHub is going to be the place for the you know, the issues and the bugs, and hopefully we'll be able to, you know, take the advice that we've been hearing about how OpenFDA is using Stack Overflow and using it pretty well. I'm really interested in looking at sort of getting approval to do that and having that be a, you know, place for conversation. I know you've said like that it makes sense. Stack Overflow for the conversation and GitHub for bugs. And you know what? Also, if anyone has any ideas about places that we can engage developers and that developers can have a conversation, I'd really love, I'd love to hear it, because like I said, this is the place where we really need to do a lot of work. So I'm happy to have, you know, another band member come in and, you know, help us rock that part of it.
Cool, cool. All right, very cool. What else? What have we not covered? I think we sort of covered everything, actually.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I've seen there's some really good questions, so maybe we can just jump on some of those, and then if something else comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me go back to the. Oh, I don't know if the questions have been. Maya has curated them for us. All right. So, is every image in the downloadable zip file guaranteed to be in the public domain, which means free for reuse? Two-part answer. The first part is me, David Hale, project manager at the NLM, is saying yes, that stuff is out there. And pretty much everything that shows up on a government website is in the public domain unless it's noted otherwise. But the catch is I am not a lawyer. Intellectual property is kind of a hobby of mine, but I am not the expert. So one of the things that we're working on now, and actually we've been talking with some folks from the Wikimedia and Wikicommons foundations about, is how to solidly and legally assert that these images are in the public domain. So, you know, you can grab them and you can use them for whatever you want. That's fine, but there's a lot of people that have good reasons for saying, no, we really need sort of an official legal statement that says every one of these images is there. One of the challenges for us is that the images we get from the VA, they just share with us openly. The ones we get from NLM come from different groups. So now we have images that come from different places.
Right.
And it's a complex problem. So also, whoever is interested in that, I would really recommend that you send me an email through the contact on the Pillbox website, through the Google Hangout. Put it in writing that, hey, I want something that says these images are totally, you know, as opposed to just the usual API data use requirements you can get on the NLM website, because that's the kind of thing that helps me get the support to say, hey, let's grab a couple legal people to get that together. We're really responsive to developers, but we need developers to put these questions into writing so we can say, look, X number of people have said that's an issue.
Just a suggestion, David, and you make your own decision, but maybe they should make a GitHub issue, and that way people can chime in, sort of +1 it, and so there's a public record of, hey, all these people said this. Just an idea.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, that would be great, yeah. Any place where we can show the ideas there and that other people support it. And part of this also, it's just, I mean, this is how open government is developing. Agencies are putting out tons of data, and it's good that we're getting to the default of just put the data out there, but you get questions like this, and it does help us be more thoughtful about how we put the data out there. But I'll tell you, everything on the Pillbox website, the download is there. Those files are there. Please grab them, use them, build awesome stuff with it.
Right, right. And just to reiterate, the cool thing about it is also that you don't have to depend on the Pillbox API staying up. I mean, it has great uptime and all that, but because it's open source, you can just, and I've done it, you can download the code, run the code yourself, and have your own instance of Pillbox and add in your own secret sauce. And you could contribute it back to the community, or you can keep it for yourself. That's the beauty of the open source, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That you can grab the code, you can do the data process yourself. You can grab all of the data and images that we've already processed and use that. And something I've seen some other agencies, maybe it's Department of Labor, can't remember who else, they've started to publish what's not terms of service, service availability, service level agreements. To say, if you're using our API, we promise our API will be available this amount of time. This is what we'll communicate. Here's the bandwidth and usage limits. And that's something I've been thinking about for Pillbox too. Because when you think about it, that kind of makes sense. Nobody else, in the private sector puts out a API without giving you a service level agreement with it. So that's something else that we're doing too, because we want people to be assured that they can do this. But at the same time, once we get the API code out there, that's even better. Because if for some reason Pillbox were to go down, you can say, I'm going to stand up my own API server.
Right, exactly. And just to note, OpenFDA is very much the same model. I've noticed that you can do the similar thing where the code is out there, you can stand up your own instance. So it's good to see everyone going in the right direction.
That's great. I just saw a message from Chris, who is also a Wikimedian, who says, yes, it is very important to be able to prove that the images are openly licensed. So that's great to know, and that's actually helping drive some good architecture changes in Pillbox, because now we have to have a different type of unique identifier. So I mean, these kind of partnerships always work out.
Cool.
Let's see. There was another question. I think I answered it earlier, but data in XML. Well, no. Is there an estimated date when we can expect data to be returned by JSON? So I'm going to go back to. I would like that to be either the Thanksgiving or the Christmas present. It might end up being a Valentine's present, but I think we're coming along pretty well with the API. So I think that should really be available sooner as opposed to later. We've just been really slow, to adopt JSON, because just in our shop we just kind of use those least common denominators because it's the least expensive way to develop. But no, everyone's been asking for JSON, and matter of fact, I think that's one of the things we should talk about on the listserv is say, hey, here's a date, and give people a date, as opposed to just saying, whenever we, get that JSON class working with our data. So that'll be one of my promises. I will get a date and get that out on the listserv.
And just a little bit more on this, if in case people are allergic to XML, because I have met a few people that are allergic to XML, you can download, and using the processing scripts, right, you can get a CSV, and then you could take that CSV and build your own API that returns JSON. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, you can. Yeah, there's. I've seen a lot of different, just sort of like this little bits of translation code for XML to JSON. I mean, in the end, it's not a technically difficult problem. It's just one of those things where our architecture was built the way it was because we built it over the years, and now we really want to make sure we build something that's more standards compliant. Right. And JSON, that's something we should have already. Yeah, we should have already done, and now we're just kind of scrambling. Like, all right, let's do that, and then hopefully that's coming at the same time as a better API that handles some basic things like pagination for the results, and error handling a little bit better. No, but that is one of our API person is actively working on that right now. So that's not a to be done. That's an in process right now.
Cool. That's great to know. Looks like we have a question about the HHS Ignite initiative. Yeah. Are you allowed to talk authoritatively about that?
Oh, I can. Having been through it, I can definitely talk authoritatively about it. Matter of fact, I'm going to see if I can. Love doing stuff on the fly, and sometimes it doesn't doesn't always work. But yeah, so HHS Ignite, like I said, is an innovation program. It's out of the CTO's, Chief Technology Officer's office, and the Idea Lab at Health and Human Services. I can't find a good link right now, but basically what it does, it's across all of HHS. So National Institutes of Health, Food and Drug Administration, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Indian Health Service. It lets small teams with a really innovative idea or opportunity have a platform, a little bit of funding, and some really expert methodology and business development support, work those ideas. They just finished the second class, I call them classes, of Ignite. And the cool thing about it is that the applications go to the CTO's office. And the CTO and the Innovation Council at HHS reviews them. People are allowed to vote on them. But then it's the secretary of HHS who goes through the final projects and picks them. And everyone who's been part of that project, including myself included, has said the golden ticket from HHS Ignite is that you basically have the secretary's check mark on your ideas saying, this thing is good, this thing needs to be done. And then you go through sort of the Ignite Incubator Bootcamp process, where they talk about lean methodology. You get to talk with a lot of the business development experts at the CTO's office. You get access to the HHS entrepreneurs and residents. So these are, really hot people from the startup world that are doing a year at HHS to bring that knowledge. And you get free time with them. Then at the end, there's a showcase. Everybody's projects come out. A lot of times there's a little more funding you can compete for. So we did that with Pillbox. We had funding from HHS. We got matching funds from our agency. Cool. Then at the end, we did, it's sort of like a Shark Tank style pitch. And then after the Shark Tank, we were able to use that to get more funding for our agency. That's completely what's funding the open source project in Pillbox. So if there's anybody on the Hangout who's within Health and Human Services and you have not applied for Ignite, really look into it. Put in an application. Matter of fact, they just opened the application period, I think, last week, and it's going to be open for 3 or 4 weeks. Cool. So really check that out and get your applications in for Ignite if you're part of Health and Human Services.
Yeah, no, totally. And I remember just as an external, I'm not in the government, but it was fun to watch all these pitches and sort of the ceremony and see they gave you some tough questions, but I think you handled them very well. But it's very fun to watch, and it's like a health-focused Shark Tank, which is very cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun and a really rewarding experience. And I think you've kind of picked up during the conversation. I've got my area of expertise. Business development isn't really part of it. And so one of the great things about Ignite is that it helps bring that kind of expertise in as well. And then you share it across HHS too. So you can work with other teams that are trying to create the same kind of positive changes as well. So I think it's a great, it's an outstanding program.
Cool. Maya, do we have any other questions? No? All right.
I do. I've got, one thing.
Oh, yeah?
Other resources that Pillbox developers should look at. Because a lot of times people just come to Pillbox because we've been kind of vocal, had some good coverage, but the truth is if you want to just play and work with and hack into medication-related data, Pillbox is a great place to start because the barrier to using the data is just so low. But eventually, and again, I'm going to put all of this in the Hangout, and it'll also be on the Hackathon or the Codathon website that ONC is doing with Treehouse. But I would say look at things like Daily Med, look at RX Norm, RX Mix, which is a little sort of configurable interface that makes it easier to use RX Norm. FDA has a ton of good stuff, not the least of which is OpenFDA now. There's a bunch of they're not hidden, but they're data sets at FDA that you won't find unless you know where to go. I'd say pick up a copy of the Structured Product Labeling, Drug Labeling Validation Procedures and read the validation procedures. So, I've been doing this for years. We found an error with our new data process, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I went back and I read the validation procedures. There's one little line that I had missed all of these years for one type of data, and that's why it was breaking. So I'd say everybody spend an evening reading that as well. There's a ton of great APIs at the National Library of Medicine. I'll post a link to our API page so you can connect to like public health information or journals in the research, clinical trials. That's really hot stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to start parsing out the clinical trials information that's in the drug labels. If it's there, you take that, connect it with the clinicaltrials.gov database, then you've got some really hot research possibilities when you can start to connect all this data.
Right, and if you don't mind me adding on top of that, you mentioned OpenFDA, but OpenFDA is actually a bunch of different things, right? They've got recalls of drugs, devices, stuff like that. There's been other people, but if you look for it, there's a thing that we've built as well that sort of brings everything in together, and clinical trials is another really good resource. We do have a question. Is there an RSS feed for Pillbox? And I think I know the answer. You go.
Yes, there is no RSS feed for Pillbox. However, one of the things that we're going to start doing is actually having an update section for Pillbox. So every time we change the data, add a new feature, add something else, whether it's public-facing or developer-facing, we're just going to have a quick little 1 or 2 sentences about that. And I think that's absolutely there should be an RSS feed.
Right.
For that.
Just in anticipation of what they were asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Daily Med does actually have an RSS feed that you can subscribe to for specific product labels. So if you want to be updated when a product label is updated or when any product label is updated, I believe they have an RSS feed on the left-hand side of their site.
Yeah, actually, I think there's several sets of feeds that you can use with Daily Med because the data set is huge. It's close to 17 gigs now. Right. So the reason Daily Med is called Daily Med is because it's updated daily. So what you can do with Daily Med is you can grab the raw data once, and then you can get monthly, weekly, daily updates, and you can subscribe to that. And then they just did a redesign of the Daily Med website. It's beautiful. Yeah, and I would really recommend everybody check out their developer resources page. There's an API for Daily Med. It does very different things from the Pillbox API, but that's why I usually say if anybody comes to Pillbox, they should immediately be reading everything they can about Daily Med and everything they can about RxNorm as well.
Yeah, and then Medline Plus too. They have some great content on some drugs as well, if I remember.
Yeah, Medline Plus. In fact, I definitely need to put a link to the NLM API page because there you can get Medline Plus Connect, PubMed, clinical trials, ton of good stuff. That's the thing. I mean, maybe just you come into the sandbox to play with Pillbox, but then you're going to find out there is a ton of super cool stuff to play with.
Yep. No, definitely. I think that's a pretty good note to end on. I don't think
one more question. From Sunny. Recommended looking at the Health Data Consortium. Oh yeah, the Health Data. Thank you, Sunny. Sunny Southern. The Health Data Consortium, which is now partnering with the Department of Health and Human Services on the Health Data Initiative. So it's a public-private partnership. Thanks. I completely forgot about that. So they're the ones that actually run the Health Data Palooza and a lot of other innovation programs. So we'll make sure that link for healthdataconsortium.org gets on the page as well. I'm going to have to go back and watch this just to remember everything that we've been talking about.
Right. Yep. No, this is good. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for answering all my tough questions, David. And, of course, thanks, Maya, for organizing this. Any housekeeping information that we should share? I think she's muted.
I see her shaking her head.
Okay. Well, great. From me, thank you very much to David and everyone for joining, and we'll get all those links up as soon as possible.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Cool. Take care. You have 6 extra minutes. Bye.